19 minutes past 8. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily, where we turn our attention to another matter. Several times we talk about the importance of database. I mean, what can a country do without data? Data and national planning is what we're focusing on now. We're joined by Oge Modi, who is the CEO of NOI Polls. Morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Timberland.
I mean, time and again we talk about data. I mean, yes, we know the importance of data with respect to planning. But as it is, I mean, NOI polls, just give us that background, because we see some of the stats that comes up from the polls. What kind of experience do you get when you go out getting those polls? How important do you think people think that is?
Well, I think that we've been doing this for 7 years. But over the last 2 years, we've made a spirited effort to try and create more awareness, around opinion research and how important it is to nation building, policy planning, even to things as simplistic as business planning and even, product development. So in pushing that awareness, what then happens is that even though in making those calls, to be able to achieve 1,000 completed interviews, we make up to 8,000 to 10,000 calls, because most times Nigerians are, a bit, surprised. Why am I getting this call? Of what importance is my opinion to a change or to an intervention by the government? But in pushing, that awareness, saying that, look, your opinion is gold. It's very important. Your opinion comes out. It's in the public space. People can use that to start to change interventions, especially when interventions are not working, can start to plan better in terms of policies. People tend to, now start to be more, welcoming, when you're calling, when you're speaking to them, whether you're collecting it face-to-face or over the telephone. So
does it mean that you predominantly make use of the survey method, distributing questionnaire to your sample size? Or
we
population?
Do both. Our core competence is polling, and that polling comes through what we've, in terms of the technical partnership we have with Gallup, which is a telephone polling. So we have a call center based out of Abuja that's manned by 25 junior analysts that call the entire nation on different polls, whether we're doing that as part of our CSR, putting information out there, or for clients who need that information to drive their business policy, business planning. But what typically happens is that we either do that, or we do the face-to-face, which is then going to the field, which is then what we call administering questionnaires. So not so distributing, but administering questionnaires across the nation on different topics. It depends on what the client wants, or it depends on what we ourselves are looking to achieve.
You talked about national planning, yes, and development, basically. In Nigeria, for instance, in recent times, we've had people collecting biodata of different people, the road safety, the police, the National Identity Card Management Commission, even the INEC. All of this collecting data. How important is data to planning? Many will think that it's not even taken into cognizance as we plan.
Well, it is very important, but I think it's the use of the data. Because, I'll start from the beginning, the basic. So data provides information around the subject matter, around the topic. So I'm collecting data as FRSC for a particular reason. I have a goal. Now, it's interpretation of that data that gives you knowledge about the subject matter, and then drives the planning process, and then helps you make a decision about the different things or the goal for that. So I think that for each different agency collecting data, they obviously have whatever goals are driving that and whatever reasons or uses they need the data for. I think the questions maybe some of us may want to ask would be, what do you want to use the data for? Okay. Eventually, what would this data do to add value to whatever processes you want to, implement or to start? So, but I think that, in separating the biodata, so things that are security driven, so you're collecting my name and, all my addresses and that, could then be different from the sort of data we collect. So the data we collect is supposed to drive knowledge about a subject matter, different from if an FRSC is collecting data to drive a process of identification across the nation. So I think that is the separation and education, again, of the public about why this data is being collected, what it can be used for eventually, and sort of end results we would see. It's what's important for every agency or every person that's collecting data from the public. I think that's very important to be able to drive that point with whoever is.
Are people skeptical when you're trying to collect data? Does your name also affect how people perceive what it is you're trying to do?
No, because you see, it's what we call a cold call. So, so when you're calling, and it's like, again, it's the selection, so it's randomly selected from the database that we have, about 70 million telephone numbers. And when you're calling blind, you're basically asking questions about topics that people want to discuss. So the key objective is really that we want to be able to understand the pulse of Nigerians on socio-economic matters. So, I mean, you've talked about elections now. We've been running what we call the 2015 series, election series. We're trying to test the pulse of Nigerians on the coming elections, wondering if they think INEC will be free and fair, understanding voting patterns and behaviors, why people vote the way they vote, and on who they would vote for when it comes to that. Are people skeptical? Initially, and that's why we could make almost 10,000 calls to get 1,000 completed interviews. But it's reduced to about 6,000 now. That's because when you're calling someone and saying, what is the quantity of power you're getting in a day? Because we want to be able to measure that against, again, what supply is saying. So supply says, look, we have 3,000 megawatts being given this month, but then what is the consumer getting? And NOI Pulse is about the only company that's measuring what people are getting. So what are people consuming? So when you're calling someone, person can say, look, I'm not even getting anything at all, or I'm getting only 1 hour continuous or 1 hour accumulated power in a day. Has it improved? People are saying, no, it hasn't improved at all. So we're recording that, and we've been recording that for about 18 months. This is our 18th month, June, to be able to put that out there. So people are getting more attuned to giving their opinion and understanding that opinion counts, because eventually it's supposed to support decision making.
What would you say that your data has, given you perhaps the greatest satisfaction in terms of where it's been employed?
Okay, I think that in terms of, first of all, the issue about power, the governance polls that we're doing, the governance polls were the first ever in Africa measuring approval ratings for a president in power. We started with Yar'Adua from when he came into power, and now we've started doing monthly over 18 months for President Jonathan. We've been able to link that approval ratings go up and down to power. So the month's power, is very good. You tend to see. We've also been able to look at the patterns of the neutrals, and I'll just take that back to understanding how data is important. For the U.S. election in 2012, an example is that when they were looking at the voting patterns, they were able to understand that those sitting on the fence were the ones that were to make the election, because, again, there was a historical data of seeing how people vote and where people vote and who they vote for, and the major concerns people had about who next was coming into power. Now, we also have seen that same difference, that each time the neutrals move, there's always a move towards disapproval or a move towards approval, and we've all understood that they're the ones that shift the changes. Now, is that information that is important for political analysts? Very important, because from there they can start to point towards what's going to happen in 2015. For the power, people are saying, okay, it's moved to the private sector. Has it improved? How do we know whether it's improved? Again, from the results that we have out there. Has it improved? It hasn't improved. Almost 7 in 10 households as at April were saying, look, we've not seen any improvement in power in the month of April, because we measure for every month. So those for us are huge successes in terms of measuring power, in terms of measuring approval ratings, understanding how Nigerians stand. In terms of also social economic indicators, child labor, we have also just finished one on child rape. So those things for us are huge pointers towards where people can take that and start to advocate. We did one on rape where we found out at least 1 in 3 Nigerians knew a rape victim. That was last year in January. And we've been able to push that result out a lot so that people can use that to advocate for law. We did one on anti-tobacco bill. A whole lot of Nigerians supported the anti-tobacco bill. So that, again, pushing that. We've done one on health, how many people stand the risk of health disease? Over 7% of Nigerians say we don't think we stand the risk. That's very dangerous for people to sit down and say, I don't think I can have a heart attack any day. So we feel that most of those polls, are adding to the public space in terms of information. People can take those polls and run with it, advocate for better health facilities, advocate for better health awareness programs, advocate for voter enlightenment programs.
Do you have clients, in terms of who are your clientele?
Oh, definitely. All three sectors. That's the beauty about NOI polls. We can serve everyone. So whether you're in the public sector, we can help you start to craft better policies to support what people want. Because the truth is that my perception or your perception is your reality. So if you feel these are the things that are important to you as an individual, then the government needs to listen to that and start to act on that. So we, across all three sectors, private sector, for business planning, we have clients in the private sector who technically need to chase or run through strategy, understand how they can change their products. We
like
have
market research.
Exactly, but in a very different way, because we talk about the mind share phenomenon, which is going over the wallet share. So it's no longer that I have money to buy a newspaper, but I have in my mind that one of the brands is the best read or widely read newspaper, so I should pick that one because probably they carry enough news. So it's about what's top of mind recall. So it's no longer about, I have money to spend, because there are a lot of choices before the consumer. So he makes an irrational decision. So it's understanding why he makes that, which is that your product is in his mind. So for us, it's opinion research, then supported by market research. So opinion research is asking people like you, what product first comes to your mind when you think about milk, when you think about noodles, when you think about different things. And it's now using that to sort of support our client in strategy development, product development.